All right, welcome to the 28th edition of Before the Battle. I am Nick Baldwin. They are Daniel Levy of BestFightPicks.com and Go Paolo, a writer for Sportsnet. And today's knockout, Daniel. It's been a while. How's it going?
It's going amazing, man. I mean, we had 3 weeks without UFC. A lot of people are complaining, but they say distance makes the heart grow fonder. So I'm pumped for these fights on Sunday, man.
It has been a decent break. We have had MMA since the last card, Frank Mir taking on Mark Hunt. So, I mean, it hasn't been no MMA since then, but first UFC card in quite some time. Paulo, how's it going?
Oh, how you guys doing? I'm pretty pumped for this card. Actually, the fact that we had like 3 weeks off and this card comes on, this is actually good because there's so much new and unknown talent here. So maybe the fans will pay more attention to them than if this was like a middle of the card with a bigger fight card later.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's not a card where casuals from all over the world are going to be tuning in, especially with it being a morning card. But it is an interesting card. Lots of upcoming talent, some good matchups as well. So I'm looking forward to breaking UFC Fight Night 86 from Zagreb, Croatia. UFC's debut in Croatia. So looking forward to this. Let's start out on the Fight Pass prelims. Two guys I know absolutely nothing about. We have Alessio De Chirico, Bojan Vilikovic, and let me see. I'm known for not getting the pronunciation of fighters' names right, so this is going to be a very interesting show when it comes to pronunciation. Daniel, do you know either of these guys? Anything about their games?
Well, firstly, Nick, I actually want to give you credit because you were pretty spot on. You pronounced it pretty close, man. So props to you. It's Alessio Di Chirico versus Bojan Velikovic. And here's the deal. Velikovic is the more experienced guy. He's the former RFA champion. He's got kickboxing experience, but obviously we know kickboxing and MMA striking are two different things. You look at a guy like Joe Schilling, one of the most unbelievable strikers in glory. Then he comes to, MMA, and he can't even win a fight. So kickboxing and MMA striking are two different things. When you talk about Alessio Di Chirico, he's a very gritty, durable, tough guy, but he hasn't fought the same level of competition that Bojan has. So for that reason, I'm going to favor Bojan, but I'm going to pass from a betting perspective.
Definitely. Now, Paulo, do you have a pick? Do you know anything about either guy?
I don't know a lot about either guy, but I know the Velikovic, I think he trains Team Elevation, if that's correct. I mean, he has a better training camp, is from what I know out of them too. And just based off of that, I'm going with him. But I'm still doing research on both these guys. I'm gonna put an article later for them. But as of now, nope, no pick as of that. All right, go with Velikovic, yeah, based off of that pick.
Yeah, I entered my predictions for this card on Bloody Elbow the other day, which will be published in a couple days. I picked Bohan here for no reason whatsoever. I flipped a coin and it landed on Velikovic. We have a heavyweight matchup between Jared Cannonier and Cyril Asker. I believe he's a UFC newcomer here. I like Cannonier here. I think he's probably fought the better fighters. The experience is tied, but Cannonier has a bit more UFC experience. I like the Killer Gorilla, most likely inside the distance. Daniel, do you agree?
Nick, I absolutely agree. I mean, Jared does have more experience, UFC experience too, and even though he got knocked out by Sean Jordan in that fight, he at least showed good footwork. He's athletic, he's elusive, and the thing with Cyril Asker is, no disrespect to him, but he's just not that good. And, at least with Jared Cannonier, like you mentioned, Nick, he's gone the distance with veterans like Tony Lopez. He went 5 hard rounds with him. And then obviously he went in there with Sean Jordan. So I think he's going to get his first UFC victory here.
And Apollo, do you like Jared Cannonier here, or do you think the newcomer here, Asker, will get the job done?
You know what? Cyril Asker knocked out the GOAT who won Potts, man. Come on, give him a little bit of credit. He finished who won Potts. Who in the UFC has ever finished who won Potts? Absolutely nobody, guys. So come on. Now, I get no disrespect, though. You guys already said everything I wanted to say about Cannonier, so we might as well throw in a joke in there. But, yeah, man, this is still the heavyweight division, so this is the division of one-punch knockouts, and stuff like that. So you know what I mean. So even though Cannonier's almost a lock here, I won't recommend a bet.
Yeah, definitely not. Don't bet this because both guys really just aren't too skilled, and it's heavyweight, as Paulo mentioned. So, I mean, anything can happen. I like Cannonier, like I mentioned, but I wouldn't be shocked whatsoever if Askers is able to win his UFC debut. Now, before we get on to the featured Fight Pass prelim, we don't really answer questions on the show, but Andrew Lawrence at the Clown Kid on Twitter just tweeted us. He says, question for the panel. Without Google, how many Croatian cities can you all name? Daniel, can you name any city other than Zagreb?
Not off the top of my head, and I'm pissed at myself for saying that. I'm ashamed. I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, I think we all may be ignorant when it comes to Croatian cities. Paulo, can you do any better than us?
Is Budapest? Oh no, wait, that's Hungary. Nope, 0.
All right, Clown Kid, there's your answer. Moving on, Fight Pass prelims, we got Rob Whiteford taking on Lucas Martins. This is a fight I'm really looking forward to in the featherweight division. Do you like the Scot here or the Brazilian, Daniel?
I like the Brazilian, man. I think that, we all know that he took a little bit of a butt whooping in his last fight against Mirsad Bektic, but he did what you're supposed to do after you take a butt whooping like that, and that's take the proper amount of time off. He didn't rush back in like in the main event, like Junior Cigano's rushing back in after he fought Alistair Overeem. Lucas Martins took his time, and now I think he's rejuvenated, and he's going to go out there. He's got that shoot the box style, and I think he's gonna stuff some takedowns, potentially win a decision, maybe knock him out. I got Lucas Martins, but Robert Whiteford is a tough guy. He's got that judo background, but I got Martins here.
And did you bet Whiteford in his last fight against Elkins?
I did bet Whiteford as an underdog in his last fight against Elkins, and I mean, not only was I disappointed in his fight IQ, just I thought his skills were a lot better than what he showed, given his judo background. But dude, Darren Elkins is in the best shape of his career right now. That fight against Chaz Skelly, I mean, one doesn't simply beat up Chaz Skelly. So props to Darren Elkins, man.
Absolutely. Now, Paulo, do you like Robert Whiteford here, or will the Brazilian get the job done?
I really like Lucas Martins here. I think he's just a better all-around fighter. This guy has a lot of skills, man. He can finish fights on feet. He can choke guys out and anything like that. And I mean, he's been fighting tougher competition. This guy was in against Edson Barboza. He fought Mirsad Bektic, and I think he even knocked out Alex White, who Alex White is. I've been underestimating that guy. That guy's a pretty hyped talent too. So based off of that, I'm gonna have to go with Lucas Martins. But as Daniel said, Robert Whiteford, man, can't count this guy out. This guy comes in to fight, so it might be tough, but I think Martins got this.
This is a close one. I'm actually going to go against both of you and pick Robert the Hammer Whiteford in this one. Martins, like Daniel pointed out, took a bad beating from I just forgot. Who did he last fight?
Bektic.
Bektic, there we go. I couldn't remember his name for whatever reason. Yeah, that was a bad beating from Mirsad Bektic. I don't know he comes back in the best shape. We've seen it doesn't happen always. It happens once in a while. We see when guys take such bad beatings, they're never really the same. Will that be the case? I don't know. That's not necessarily why I'm picking Whiteford here. I honestly think Whiteford is, despite coming off that loss to Elkins, I think he's been doing pretty well as of late, coming off a knockout prior to that loss earlier last year. He's looking really good. Martins looking all right. I was impressed against Alex White. Then he's lost a couple in a row, if I'm not mistaken. I'll go with Whiteford here, but I've been flipping back and forth in this featherweight fight. It's definitely a close one, but I'll go with the Hammer here. Moving on, we have a very interesting lightweight matchup between Mairbek Taisimov and Damir Hadzovic. Daniel, you're really high on Mairbek Taisimov. Do you like him here in this one?
Yeah, I mean, how can you not be high on Mairbek Taisumov? He's an incredible fighter. He's been knocking guys out. The fans love knockouts, but a lot of people don't know about Damir Hadzovic. I'm going to tell you right here, right now, that Damir Hadzovic is already a lightweight contender. I mean, this guy, first of all, his only loss is to Krzysztof Jotko and Andreas Stahl, two guys that are in the UFC at 185 and 170. This guy's a 55, all right? He's 30 years old, and he's making his UFC debut. He's got a lot of experience. He's better than all the guys that Taisumov's fought in the UFC. He's got knockout power. He mixes his strikes to his takedowns very effectively. And here's the thing, Taisumov's a killer, so you can't count him out. But from a betting perspective, Damir Hadzovic should not be plus 300. It should be more like plus 150. So due to the fact that he is plus 300, I'm going to take that shot because this guy is really damn good. But, I mean, all respect to Mairbek Taisumov. He's a great guy. He's a great fighter, and I've made a lot of money on him in the past. But in this spot, I got to go with Damir. And I think you guys will be impressed if you go and check out his past fights.
Interesting. Now, Paulo, are you going to agree with Daniel here and pick the fairly sizable underdog here, or will Mairbek Taisumov continue his winning streak?
You know what? This is one of those I'm gonna pick Mairbek Taisumov just as a straight pick. But when it comes to like fantasy or betting, like Daniel said, or even just Talent Master, I'm gonna go with Hadzovic because, like, yeah, this guy's pretty underrated, man. I'm just thinking that Taisumov is a plus 330 because that's probably how much because he has more UFC experience, and then he's beaten like a lot of guys. So like the bookies probably have more information on, so they can set his lineup like that. But Hadzovic is, I mean, I only saw a couple of fights from this guy, but he knocked out John McGuire, and like John McGuire's like a really tough vet that's hard to finish, and he goes in there and whoops him in one round after, like, I don't know, and he didn't even fight that aggressively in that fight. He looked like he was taking his time. He was chill, like, you know what I mean? Like, McGuire's a pretty deadly ground fighter, and when he caught him in a freaking helicopter submission or whatever that was, he just, like, you know, shrugged him off and then just walked away all calm. So I really like his demeanor. I just hope he doesn't get the octagon jitters or that newcomer jinx or whatever, but I think he's in a good spot to win here. But I'm going to go with Taisumov overall because of the UFC experience and because he's the more well-rounded fighter.
Yeah, I am going to choose the Russian in this one. I like Mairbek Taisumov, probably by decision. I don't see Damir Hadzovic getting finished. Taisumov has a lot more experience that could come into play. I'm not going to lie, I don't know a ton about Hadzovic, although, like Daniel just mentioned, and prior to when I just heard Daniel break down this fight right now, I actually have heard from multiple people that know him a bit better. Damir, like Daniel mentioned and like Paolo mentioned, is a really top prospect right now. He's really good all around. So, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he gets his first UFC win here in his debut. But ultimately, I like Mairbek Taisumov. I think just all around, his game might be one step ahead of Damir's at this point. I'm not saying Damir will never live up to his expectations and never make a run in the UFC with a winning record, but I just don't think it's his time against Mairbek. Taisumov has been looking really good. He has been out for a little while. He was supposed to fight Beneil Dariush. I believe he was forced out of that one due to visa issues. It could have been an injury. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure it was visa, but if it was an injury, I mean, I can't blame anyone for going with Hadzovic here because Mairbek has been out for a while. I'm going to go with Taisumov here, but it is a close fight, and I don't necessarily agree with the odds. Moving on, we have a very, very interesting bantamweight fight. Really looking forward to this one. We have Ian Entwistle returning against tough Latin America winner Alejandro Perez. Paulo, who do you like in this 135-pound clash?
You know, Entwistle could get a finish here really early. He's a better grappler, but the thing about these Alejandro Perez is this guy's just tough overall, man, and this guy's kind of hard to finish. Now, I know he got finished really badly by Patrick Williams from that Mexican card that you picked, Nick, but but that was basically just Patrick Williams beasting on him, basically just bum rushed him and almost just took him to that choke, and that was it. Now, the thing about Entwistle, he's a craftier kind of fighter. But if the fight that go to the ground, I really favor him to win this fight, and I think it might end up there at some point, maybe in the second round. So I'm gonna go with Entwistle, probably by sub.
Now, Daniel, do you like Entwistle here or Alejandro Perez?
Well, firstly, as always, I do give credit where credit is due, Nick. That was a very sharp call on Patrick Williams. And, I mean, it taught us a lesson about Alejandro. I mean, even in his subsequent fights, he goes in there against Jose Quinones, and honestly, I didn't think he won that fight. And then his fight with Scott Jorgensen, look, he's got Scott Jorgensen hurt. He's got Scott Jorgensen on one leg, and then he's running away from him. I'm like, we're screaming at our TV, look, if Thomas Almeida has you wobbled on one leg, you're getting knocked out right then and there. So when you talk about a guy like Perez, I just question his fight IQ, and you know, does he really want it that bad? And with that being said, Ian Entwistle, you know, he's one of these leg lock guys. It's basically leg lock or bust. He's either gonna submit you in the first round with a heel hook or a knee bar, maybe even a rear naked choke. But if he doesn't, he's gonna look for that door. So this fight's gonna end in the first round, but I'm gonna say that Ian Entwistle will submit him with a leg lock in the first round.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. I like the smaller version of Husamar Paul Harris in this one. Ian Entwistle should get the job done. He has a bit of a layoff on his record right now, which is interesting. That could give Perez an advantage. I'm not that high on Perez. I've picked against him in multiple of his UFC fights. Entwistle, he's really sneaky on the ground. He not recently, but back in 2014 in his last fight, he subbed Anthony Burchak in a big upset. Now, both Daniel and I have interviewed Burchak. He's a cool guy, and he's a great fighter. So a win over Burchak, even though some people still say, yeah, Burchak probably wins more times out of 10, he still got the job done very impressively. So you got to give props to Entwistle for getting that submission in the first round. I like Ian Entwistle to finish this one and finish this early. I like Ian Entwistle here all day by submission, most likely in the first round. Maybe it can go past the first and in the second, but definitely like Entwistle here inside the distance. Next up, Nicholas Dalby taking on Zach Cummings in a welterweight matchup. Daniel, do you like Dalby here or Zach Cummings?
This is a really good fight because, I mean, Zach Cummings, he's obviously a very gritty dude. His last fight, he showed that he's improved his stand-up. He's got good knockout power. But the thing with Nicholas Dalby is he always finds a way to win. And, I mean, even in his last fight where it was a draw, I mean, he lost that first round by getting completely dominated, and then he got dropped, and then he loses the second round, and then he comes back to win a 10-8 in the third. So the guy just doesn't know how to lose. And I think what's going to happen here is he's going to be really elusive. He's going to be sharpshooting, as his nickname indicates, and he's going to win a 30-27 here. So I got Nicholas Dalby.
And Paolo, do you like Zach Cummings here or Nicholas Dalby?
Yeah, I really like Dalby here too. I think he's being undervalued here, and I'm not sure why there's so much movement on Zach Cummings. I mean, yeah, Zach Cummings. I mean, he's kind of tough. He's kind of gritty, and he sort of did give Gunnar Nelson a little bit of a hard time, but I think it was just Gunnar Nelson basically just like, I don't know, just starting up slow and then waking up and then whooping Cummings after. But I mean, Dalby, this guy's I think he's a bit underappreciated because he's like one of those new generation type of European talent who can actually wrestle. You know what I mean? I mean, he used some wrestling against Darren Till against Zaleski there. And usually when you think about European talent, they're like, oh, they can't wrestle. They can't wrestle for shit. But this guy actually can, at least offensively. Now against Cummings, if Cummings chooses to like sort of like, I don't know, maybe wrestle him or brand him, because Cummings is a pretty big dude. I mean, can he handle himself? And I think he can, at least for most of the fight. He can win most of the fight and probably get a close 29-28 win over here. But I'm pretty confident he can do it. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Dalby here.
I'm going to go against you guys again. I like Zach Cummings here by decision in this one. Both fighters are super, super gritty, so I'm looking forward to this one. It could result in a bore fest, but more than likely it'll be a very exciting fight. I like Cummings here. I don't know if he grinds Dalby out. I just haven't been that impressed with Dalby, and Paul said it right there. He's underappreciated, but I kind of disagree. I really haven't been overly impressed with a sharpshooter since he made his debut against Dos Santos. I want to say last year. Won a split decision in his debut. Looked better against Darren Till. That went to a draw. That was a fun fight. But I mean, nothing he has done has stood out to me anyways. Zach Cummings coming off a big knockout win in his last outing back last summer. I think his stand-up is a bit better. It's definitely improved. And then on the ground, it's kind of like flip a coin, and whoever has their better night is probably the better fighter on the ground. And in the wrestling department, I'm going to go Zach Cummings here by close decision, but it's definitely a close fight, and that pick of Zach Cummings I'm not confident in, but I like him here by close 29-28 decision. Moving on, first fight on the Fight Pass main card, I believe. Is this on Fox Sports 1? Because up in Canada, it just says TSN. It might actually be Fox Sports 1. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. Marina Moroz taking on UFC newcomer Christina Stansu. Daniel, do you like Moroz or Christina in this one?
Moroz, I think she's a former champion boxer, and she's got a good armbar. She actually had a flying armbar on Joanne Calderwood. She was a big underdog there. And Christina is actually a Wushu champion, but she's making her UFC debut, so I got to go with the more experienced fighter, and that's Moroz.
Now, Paolo, do you like the UFC Marina Moroz, who has more UFC experience, or do you like Christina Stansiu, who I'm probably butchering her name first and last, Stansiu, whatever, or do you like her to pick up her first UFC win in her debut?
You know what? I'd like to say Moroz should be a lock here, but there's no such thing as a lock in Wibbits MMA, as we found out. But no, she's the more experienced fighter. She's more technical, although not by much, and she's got the experience, you know what I mean? But the thing about this fight, though, this girl comes in to brawl. I uploaded a video of her against, I forgot the girl's name, but in the local scene, and she starts out the fight like Diego Sanchez and Clay Guida, basically. Just went at her and just started throwing bows, rock'em sock'em robots. Now the thing is, she's obviously not going to be able to keep up that pace. So if she doesn't finish Moroz, and I don't think she will, I think Moroz's experience is just going to take over, and she's probably going to win the rest of the fight. Because I don't know, other than brawling and some pretty nasty ground pound, I don't know what else she could possibly do to Moroz.
I tend to agree. I watched that one little clip of a part of Christina's fight where she went. I believe it was her where she went full Lineker. So, I mean, that could happen. She could pick up an early stoppage. I don't see it happening. I think Marina Moroz is tough enough, and the experience, UFC experience specifically, might come into play. It's an interesting fight. The more I find out about Christina Stansiu, I mean, the closer I think it gets. She could finish this in round one. I don't think she will, though. Marina Moroz, I like her to kind of weather the storm, I guess you could say, in the first round and take over, like Paulo said, in the second and third, and ultimately take home a decision win. But, I mean, it's a women's strawweight fight, and I think all of us get more women's strawweight fights wrong than right. So, I mean, who knows? Anything can happen. Moving on, we got Igor Pokarac taking on John Blachowicz in a light heavyweight matchup. Daniel, who do you like in this one?
I mean, the line says that Jan Blachowicz should win, and he should win, but will he win? I mean, I could totally see him finding a way to lose, but at the same time, Igor Pokarac has lost his last 5 UFC fights, and then he goes on the regional scene, and they literally put him against cans, like guys that are 0-3. So he gets a couple wins. Now he's back in the UFC, fighting in Croatia. And, I mean, with the 4-ounce gloves, they're big guys. Anyone can go down. You got to lean towards Jan, obviously, because, that body kick he landed on Latifi, I mean, just a crack. It makes you cringe. It's unbelievable. So I'd like to see something like that. But, at the same token, it'd be nice to see a nice knockout by the Duke. It's been a while since he's put someone away. But, you got to go with Jan here.
Absolutely. Now, Paulo, do you like Jan Blachowicz here or the Duke?
Yeah, I like Jan Blachowicz here. I mean, I'm surprised we get Igor Pokrajak back in the UFC. I think it's probably because they needed someone from Croatia, so he's just over there, so let's just bring him back. But I mean, he is a pretty fun fighter though. He's a tough guy. Comes in to brawl, even though he loses. Like, I mean, he lost his last 5. I mean, that's the reason why the UFC kept him for so long, even if he kept losing. The only other guy I could think of who lasted in the UFC with 5 losses is Leonard Garcia, and we know how Leonard Garcia is. But no, Jan Blachowicz should be better than Pokrajak, theoretically on paper, in nearly everything. And he's got a pretty good chin, so I don't think Pokrajak is going to, knock him out with one punch. Although, like Daniel said, with those gloves, anything can happen. And Jan Blachowicz could totally underperform in there and get knocked out. But I think Blachowicz is pretty close to a lock here.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you guys said. I like Blachowicz here, most likely inside the distance. Pokrajak hasn't fought inside the UFC since last December, so it's been quite some time. He's suffered multiple losses in a row, 3 losses in a row, 2 of them by first-round knockout. Jan Blachowicz hits really hard, especially his kicks, like Daniel pointed out, against the god Ilir Latifi back in 2014. It is kind of an interesting fight, but I do think Jan Blachowicz is more or less a lock. But who knows? This is a Croatia card. Igor is Croatian, so I mean, anything can happen. Maybe the hometown crowd will root him on enough, and he'll be able to get back into the winning column. But I don't see that happening. I like Blachowicz here by knockout. Moving on, we have a heavyweight matchup between Timothy Johnson and UFC newcomer Marcin Tybura. I've been waiting quite some time to see Tybura inside the UFC cage. Daniel, do you like him here, or will Mr. Mustache get back into the winning column?
I think that Timothy Johnson's going to get back into the win column, man. I think that obviously he's an American wrestler. He's tough. He's also gritty. He's got knockout power. His UFC debut, he takes out a Russian in the first round. One doesn't simply take out a Russian in the first round. And with Marcin Tybura, I mean, he's very hyped. But, I mean, if you watch when you watch someone's highlight reel, you're expecting to see their best moments, them at their absolute best. In this guy's highlight reels, I had to turn off his highlight reel, so I can only imagine what a full fight with this guy is like. So, yeah, man, I got to go with Timothy Johnson here. Whether it's a knockout, whether it's a decision or a submission, I think he will win the fight.
Maybe I shouldn't be excited to see Marcin Tybura inside the UFC cage for the first time. We'll see on Sunday morning/afternoon. Paulo, do you like Tim Johnson here or UFC newcomer Marcin Tybura?
Yeah, I like Timothy Johnson here. I don't know why he's the underdog because Marcin Tybura he's a pretty hype guy, and I think he's on this ridiculous winning streak, or he's won a ridiculous amount of fights so far in Europe. But this guy is sort of he's almost like a grinder, man. That's the type of fighter he is. And going up against a big, tough wrestler like Timothy Johnson, who almost out-wrestled Jared Rosholt. And you don't simply out-wrestle Jared Rosholt, you know what I mean? So at this point that Timothy Johnson's the underdog, I think I'm going to pick him straight up to win.
I will go against you guys yet again. I'll go with Marcin Tybura. I don't have too much of an explanation. I'm not that high on Timothy Johnson. He hasn't looked that great. That first round TKO in what I believe was his UFC debut was impressive, but I mean, against who? That's kind of what I'm getting at. The competition level is not that high. I'm not saying Tybura's competition level is high either, but he finished Damian Grabowski, UFC fighter, faster than Derek the Black Beast Lewis did, and Derek Lewis is everyone's new favorite fighter. He's
hold on. Derek Lewis absolutely killed Grabowski, so just because this guy finished him faster, I mean, is that really that much of an accomplishment? Melvin Gillard finished Dennis Seaver faster than Conor McGregor did. I mean, big deal.
So Melvin Gillard would knock out Conor McGregor. Easy.
Exactly.
Nevertheless, I'm sticking to my very thought out explanation there. Tybura beat Grabowski faster than the Black Beast did. Black Beast is the heavyweight Ilir Latifi. Everyone loves him, so I'll go with Marcin Tybura with a late stoppage, ground and pound TKO over Tim Johnson. Moving on, another heavyweight matchup, which I'm really looking forward to. Francis Gano, and I believe I got that right, shockingly, taking on Curtis Blades, UFC newcomer. Daniel, do you like Gano here or Curtis Blades?
It's a tough one, man. I mean, here's the thing with this fight. With Ngannou, I think it's one of these cases where the most impressive part of his game isn't anything in his fighting abilities. It's his physique. It's like Czech Congo, you know? Like, he always looked like the most imposing, like a superhero, but then you watch him fight, and it's kind of like, you know, he doesn't fight like what he looks like, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's the case with Ngannou. Now, the deal with Curtis Blades is that he's an American wrestler. He's 265 pounds, and he's going to take down Ngannou for sure. What happens after that remains to be seen. But from what I've witnessed so far, you know, in Ngannou's first fight, he didn't get up from the takedown on his own. The ref helped him up. It was kind of like that Sage Northcutt versus Cody Pfister fight where the ref stood them up. That's what happened there. So, you know, let's say Curtis Blades gets on top of him. I mean, I think he's going to pass that guard, go to the full mount, and possibly pound him out for the victory. But at the same time, you know, he hasn't been fighting top-level competition, but either has Ngannou. So, I mean, I'm going to go with Blades here.
Daniel, Paolo, do you like Blades here or Gano?
Yeah, you know what? When Blades I was getting ready to bet big on Blades after watching some of his fights in Gano's. Because here's the thing about Gano. The guy he fought originally, I think his name was Luis Enrique or whatever, that guy was a fat middleweight, you know what I mean? And he was getting taken down by a fat middleweight over and over, you know? And it's just that he didn't do anything to him on the ground. That's why the ref stood him up. And it took him a while to knock him out. It's just because, like, I think Enrique was, like, gassing because he kept going for shooting for takedowns all the time and just pressing him up against the wall. And it took Gano, and I mean, landed clean on him and knocked him out, of course. But, I mean, Blades is bigger, more explosive than Enrique. So what the hell is he going to do to him? I mean, it is heavyweight, so Gano could always land that big shot and put Blades out. But, man, he was an underdog, so I bet on him right there. So he has to be my bet and my pick.
Once again, I am going against both of you. I like Francis Gano here inside the distance by knockout in the first round. Curtis Blades there's a very good chance he will get a takedown or 2 takedowns or even 3 in this fight. But what I'm hoping for and what Francis Gano is hoping for, we have a very anxious ref who likes to stand up fights very early. That is my breakdown. I hope the ref stands him up. I hope Gano lands that big shot. I hope he knocks out Curtis Blades. But seriously, I do think that will happen. I mean, Gano, as a big knockout artist, he most likely he's working on his takedown defense and just his ground game overall. I mean, I hope he is. Do I know for sure? No, but I mean, he should be if he wants to go a bit far in the heavyweight division, which is a very shallow division, and with this guy's knockout power alone, he could go a little far. Anyways, I think he's probably going to be better when it comes to takedown defense. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. I wouldn't be super confident in either guy here because, like we said with an earlier fight, it's heavyweight. Anything can happen. Gano can get that first round knockout. Blades, despite being a bit more of a wrestler, can also land a big shot just because of his size and how much power he has as a 265-pound man. Nevertheless, I'm going to go with the Predator here. I like Francis Gano by first round knockout. Moving on, yet another heavyweight. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to add that, you know what, if you're thinking about it, like we talked about Taisumov and Hadzovic, now we have Gano and Blades, and a while ago we had Tybura and Timothy Johnson. I'm like, they're taking a lot of these like prospects or this growing talent and then giving them tough fights right away. You know what I mean? They're not like building it up slow. They're just like throwing them into the wolves. So that's gonna make for a really interesting card for sure. But it's also frustrating because Ngano and Blades, I'm high on both these guys, and you gotta see one of them lose. So, well, whatever.
It's a fun matchup. It's a fun matchup, but I definitely agree in the sense that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You want to bring up as many heavyweight prospects as possible because heavyweight is so thin. It's one of the most thin divisions in the UFC. So why get rid of a top prospect so early in both these guys' career? Gano is only 6-1. Blades is undefeated at 5-0. So neither guy has tons of experience. So I mean, both these guys could go, like I said, a bit far in the UFC simply because of their power. And I do think both of these guys are somewhat skilled anyways. But it's kind of disappointing that one guy will lose already in just their second or first fight in the UFC. But nevertheless, let's move on to the afternoon's co-main event between Derek the Black Beast Lewis, who we mentioned earlier on, of course, and former top contender Gabriel Gonzaga. Paolo, do you like the Black Beast here or Nepal?
You know what? I'm really tired betting on Derek on Black Beast fights. I'm not going to bet this fight, but I think I'm going to pick it right because I'm not going to bet on it. I'm going to pick Black Beast. And the reason why is, both these guys, they hit hard, but both of them don't have the best chance. So there's a good chance if this fight stays standing, one of them is going to be put to sleep. But the thing about Gonzaga is this guy fought Konstantin Orokin, I think, in his last fight, which was probably a contender for the most boring heavyweight fight in history, along with Jared Rojal and Stefan Struve. No offense to the guys. But he exploited Orokin's lack of takedown defense and basically just laid on him for the most boring decision win. Now, I mean, I think he realizes that he has a bad chin, so he's trying not to stand as much and just try to go for takedowns all the time. And he's going to try to do that on Black Beast, but Black Beast has been fighting guys who have been shooting on him and trying to take him down for a while now, so he's going to be ready for that. And I think eventually he's going to catch Gonzaga and put him away for good.
Now, Daniel, do you like Derek Lewis here or Gabriel Gonzaga?
Well, stylistically, it's intriguing because the way that the Black Beast, Derek Lewis, typically wins his fights is via ground and pound. So the question is he going to take down a guy like Gabriel Gonzaga down at the ground, multiple-time jiu-jitsu world champion? The scenario where I do see him getting on top of Gonzaga, obviously if he drops him, they are heavyweights, but the realistic scenario in my mind is, in the later rounds, if Gonzaga, is a little more gassed out, he's tired, he's shooting on a sloppy takedown, that's where I think that the Black Beast can, reverse the position and capitalize on the opportunity and then land his signature ground and pound for the KO victory. But if that doesn't happen, he might get submitted in the first round. Gonzaga, if he takes guys down and they don't know how to defend, it might be a bad night for them, but at the same token, Derek Lewis has been making improvements every fight. I've noticed it. So I'm going to lean Derek Lewis here.
Now, you mentioned Gonzaga's grappling accolades, and that's something that should be mentioned more when people are breaking down this fight, because Derek Lewis almost got submitted by none other than Juan Potts, who is known as one of the worst fighters, who once was in the UFC. No offense to Juan Potts if you're listening. I highly doubt you are, though. So, I mean, could Gonzaga get him down to the ground somehow and beast the Black Beast into a submission? Possibly, but I don't think that's going to happen. I like Derek Lewis here. I think Gonzaga is too done. He's coming off a win, but that was in one of the most boring fights I've ever seen back late last year. Again, no offense to Gonzaga, but that was a bad fight. I hope you're not listening, but I also like
the worst fight ever.
Like Juan Potts. Like Juan Potts, I doubt you're listening. Anyways, Lewis, I think, will get Gonzaga down to the ground, be able to avoid any submission attempts, and do what the Black Beast does. Beast himself towards a ground and pound knockout in the first round. I think it's a pretty safe pick. Gonzaga is not the same fighter he once was. He's he other than his last win, he hasn't looked good. Well, he didn't look good in that one, but he's basically on a losing streak. He hasn't looked good for quite some time. he should probably hang up the gloves, especially if he gets beasted by the Black Beast on Sunday afternoon. I think that's what's going to happen. Derek Lewis will be able to avoid any submission attempts, get on top early, and grind out, and end up ground and pounding his way towards a first-round TKO win. I highly doubt we see these two men in the second round. Moving on, yet another heavyweight matchup. This time it's the main event of the evening. Go Paulo's favorite fighter, number 4 ranked, Big Ben Rothwell, taking on former champion Junior Cigano dos Santos. Paulo, are you going with Big Ben?
See, this is a tough fight, and I like both fighters actually, but obviously Big Ben's my favorite, as we mentioned. The thing about Cigano is this guy is he might really not be the guy he used to be. I mean, we saw that in his Las Vegas Overeem. He didn't have his natural explosiveness and killer instinct that we're used to seeing from him. And a big part of his game was his speed, his reflexes, and his explosiveness. And I think that's gone now. I mean, like they said, speed is the first to go. And I think he's part of that stage now where he's just not explosive anymore, and he's more gun-shy now. Now, see, you can't be like that against Ben Rothwell because a lot of fighters have tried tipping toe around him. That didn't really end up well for them. I mean, Brandon Vera tried the same thing with just Peter pattering him from distance, keeping his range. Eventually, Rothwell just cornered him and put him away. So I think we're going to see something like that happening here, where JDS is finding success against him early on, probably winning 2 out of 3 rounds. Then Rothwell eventually just catches him and puts him away at some point.
Now, Daniel, do you like Big Ben Rothwell here, or will the former champion get back into the winning column? It seems like forever since we've seen JDS look good and win. Will that happen, or will Big Ben pick up the biggest win of his career?
Well, firstly, these are 2 of the nicest guys in the UFC. But as far as Cigano's concerned, his run from his Fabricio Werdum knockout to his Frank Mir knockout, that's the best run in heavyweight history, in my opinion. I do believe that the prime Junior Cigano is the best heavyweight of all time. Better than Fedor, better than Werdum, and better than Kane. Now, with that being said, that guy is long gone. Not only is he not as explosive and powerful, well, he's still powerful, don't get me wrong, but not only is he not as explosive as he used to be, he doesn't believe in himself like he used to, and that's a big factor in the fight game. And with Ben Rothwell, he totally believes in himself. The momentum's on his side, and a lot of people think he looks awkward, but you know what? He finds a way to win. And when you break down his fights, you can't say, oh, he's gonna throw a jab to a leg kick and then get a takedown. You can't really break it down. All I gotta say is he's gonna find a way to win. I truly believe Ben Rothwell will find a way to win this Sunday in Zagreb, Croatia.
Now, I seem to fade Ben Rothwell quite a bit. I picked him against Josh Barnett, one of the first times I've ever picked him, and I was right. Ben Rothwell has looked super good as of late. Junior Dos Santos, not as much. I picked JDS despite being almost taunted to pick my favorite fighter, Alistair Overeem, by Go Paulo, and ended up, if I took Paulo's advice there, I would have looked like a genius, but I did not. I picked Dos Santos in that one, and obviously he had a disappointing performance, got knocked out in the first round. I actually disagree with Daniel. I don't think a prime JDS is even the greatest. He's one of the best. I don't think he's the greatest, but it doesn't really matter anymore whether or not he was the greatest, because he's not the greatest anymore, and he's far from that. He hasn't looked good as of late. He doesn't have too much. He can't take too much power. He seemed tentative in his last fight. He did not throw that much in his last fight. Ben Rothwell finds a way to win, like Daniel pointed out. He can be down on the scorecards and come back to pick up a win. He can be down in the first round and get a first-round submission or a knockout. He can win this fight almost any way. Dos Santos has knockout power. That's the only way I see him winning. And it's still, Dos Santos might not even throw that much like he did against Overeem. So even that it is tough to see happening. If he does land, Rothwell will go out because Dos Santos is such a hard puncher. He has so much power where he can knock out anyone. Power is the last thing to go. Everyone knows that. So I mean, Dos Santos could knock him out. I wouldn't be overly surprised, but I am going Ben Rothwell by third consecutive go-go choke in the first round. I do think, and I'm not just saying that, I do think Ben Rothwell gets him down to the ground and uses his patent, his worldwide famous go-go choke to submit the former champion. Now, Paolo, you are big in DraftKings. If you have a team ready to go ahead and share your 5 fighters on your DraftKings.com team.
I actually don't have my DraftKings yet, man. I haven't gotten to that part yet. I haven't even finished breaking down yet. But judging by how this card is, there's going to be a lot of close pricing because DraftKings bases their pricing off of the odds, and we've got a lot of really close fights on here. I'm seeing like three fights that are close to pick'em odds, or 4 actually. So DraftKings is going to be really tight. So as far as an advice goes, probably just go with the cheaper fighters, man, for the meantime. Unless there's like a good chance of a finish, like a heavyweight fight, then go for like the cheaper fighters at heavyweight down there. Because like if a heavyweight underdog like who's like a Timothy Johnson or a Gonzaga wins, that's like worth a lot of marbles because it's usually early and they're probably not that expensive.
Now, Daniel, I know you're not as big into DraftKings, but anything to add onto what Paulo just said?
Yeah, I can give you the best fight picks for UFC Zagreb. Right now, I got Ben Rothwell at plus 110, Timothy Johnson at plus 150. I got Perez and Entwistle does not start round 2 at plus 104. And then I'm going to put a little bit on Damir Hadzovic. You know, right now it's plus 300, but there's no signs that anyone else is trying to bet on him, so it might get even better. So I'm going to wait that one out a little bit. And then if by some stretch of the imagination Curtis Blades becomes the underdog, I'll take that shot too.
Now, I was planning to make a DraftKings team, but my computer is not loading in time, and I'm not going to sit here and wait for 5 minutes to pick out 5 fighters. So I'd like to thank you guys very much for once again joining me here on Before the Battle. Daniel, let our audience know where they can find you on social media and anything coming up, where we can find your podcast, your bets, everything else, what you got coming up. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can find me at Best Fight Picks on Twitter, bestfightpicks.com for the bets, and my podcast, Half the Battle, interviewing the most exciting fighters in the game. Subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Let's see, we got Sam Alvey coming up next week. Last week we had Dan Kelly, who's coming off one of the most impressive upsets of the year. Total gentleman, total badass. I mean, Jimmy Rivera, total winner. And then obviously after James Vick choked this guy out at UFC 197, you know we're going to be back on board on Half the Battle. So Half the Battle. Follow me on Twitter at Best Fight Picks. Good to talk to you guys.
Now, Paulo, where can we find you on the social media? Where can we find your writing, all your breakdowns? Go ahead.
Yeah, you know what? That's going to be a tough act to follow for Daniel, so be sure to go check out those in-depth fighter interviews that he has. But, you know, for me, you can find my writing at Sportsnet and Today's Knockout. I got a lot of couple articles coming in, actually. I'm going to be doing like a sort of like a mini breakdown of all the newcomers for UFC Fight Night 86. That's why I'm unable to talk about them much here yet, because I'm just like still viewing them and watching them. Yeah, go check that out.
All right, and as for me, you can check out my other podcast. I guess news to this show anyways, because we haven't done Before the Battle for quite some time since this past March, of course, last month when Mir fought Hunt. We actually recently changed our podcast name to the MMA Circus. And that is now on bloodyelbow.com. So it's basically the same show. We've introduced a new segment. A couple more are on the way. We're kind of starting fresh, but I wouldn't really call it a reboot of the podcast because it's the same podcast, just a new location, just a new name. Still same feed on iTunes, on Stitcher, things like that. So keep listening. This past weekend, we had UFC bantamweight contender Rafael Assunção he came on the show to talk about when he's planning on returning. He's 100% healthy. he actually revealed that he was supposed to rematch TJ Dillashaw on May 29th. Dillashaw was supposedly hurt, so could not take that fight. Garbrandt Almeida is that headliner. So right now he's kind of just waiting for a fight. And it was a great interview. He was talking about how he's been the nice guy for his whole career, but he's done with being the nice guy. And I quote, he basically says, "No more Mr. Nice Guy for Rafael Santos. He is going to talk. He plans on talking trash because he realizes that's the way to get big fights and title shots, and you gotta agree with him on that. Also on this past week's show, episode 53, Peter Barrett, who takes on Jeff Anderson at Cage Titans FC this weekend. So check out both those interviews, my writing, bloodyelbow.com, my Twitter, @NickUFC, and I think that's about it. Daniel, you have one last thing to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm really glad you got Rafael Sunsao on your show. You know, he's one of the most underrated bantamweight prospects in the world. Obviously, he's my ATL boy, very cool guy. And I can't wait to see great things from him, man. And I actually didn't know that he was supposed to fight TJ Dillashaw. So you said TJ pulled out?
Yes.
Due to injury or due to not wanting the fight?
Sunsao said the UFC told him injury, but I think from how Sunsao was talking about it, he kind of thinks Dillashaw's scared. But
okay, so what really is happening is Dillashaw is waiting for Cruz to beat Faber so he can get that immediate rematch.
Basically, and Santos is also kind of saying, well, Dillashaw, yeah, your turn is up. You were the champion, not anymore. Santos obviously would like to fight the winner of Faber Cruz, or of course, fill in for if, say, Cruz gets hurt or Faber gets hurt. But right now, Santos knows nothing else other than he's going to return soon. He just doesn't have an opponent.
Yeah, and let me say something, man. I mean, this bantamweight division, I mean, TJ better be on top of his game because these guys coming up are no joke. You know, Tomas Almeida, Jimmy Rivera, these guys are no joke. So everyone better be on top of their game in that division. Aljamain Sterling.
Absolutely. Now, let me quickly add, I just made a DraftKings team right now. I got Ben Rothwell, Derek Lewis, Francis Gano, John Blackwich, and Ian Entwistle. So I was surprised to see both all Entwistle, Lewis, and Rothwell at fairly inexpensive prices.
They're underdog prices, yeah. I know. That was surprising.
Yes, Lewis is 9,100, and Entwistle is 9,300. So very cheap on DraftKings, and I think they both get first-round finishes. But that is it for episode 28 of Before the Battle. Thanks to you guys for listening. Enjoy the fight. And shout out to George St. Pierre for launching his own show on the History Channel where he searches for dinosaurs.